Sometimes a band comes along, drops an absolutely mind-blowing debut, exists in the cultural zeitgeist of the progressive metal world's collective consciousness for a short, sharp and very exciting time, but then mysteriously fades away into the background, seemingly never to be heard from again. Thank God, then, that Ihlo have roared back into life with their upcoming sophomore release of Legacy, because this subsequent salvo from these fresh-faced Brits deserves to be talked about amongst the best second albums from any progressive metal band ever. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, my name is Ian, this is Rhyme Signatures, and we are once again opening the lid on the best new releases in prog, rock, and metal. Okay, so late last year I had the rare pleasure of seeing Ihlo live alongside both Omnirod and Prognosis in a tiny little venue in Manchester. It was one of the coolest gigs I'd ever been to because it showed me a band who were scrappy, hungry, passionate and dedicated to their craft in ways that I don't very often get to see. This power trio have made a career of sounding bigger than the sum of their parts, and their debut album of Union, released back in 2019, encapsulated that idea almost perfectly. It was vast and exploratory, showcasing that you can be a Djent-adjacent band and not sound like a cheap knockoff of Periphery or Tesseract. From Andy Robinson's astonishing vocal delivery, Phil Monroe's crunchy guitars and bass lines, and Clark McMenemy's rolling drum fills, Ihlo were providing a lot of sound from a limited number of hands. Their soaring, synth-heavy anthems and stank-faced breakdowns were a breath of fresh air in the progressive metal world, and Union was justifiably very well received. So what's happened in the last 6 years? Legacy is most assuredly the Ihlo that we've come to know and love from their debut album, but this is a version of the band that's evolved past their roots, grown into their own ideas and theories, and blossomed into the ultimate version of their music. Legacy is more than just a successful follow-up to an excellent debut. It's a powerful statement piece from a band who are ready to return to the world and remind everyone precisely why they were so lauded after the release of Union. So, where do I start with an album like this? I suppose I should let you know what to expect if you're already familiar with Ihlo. As I've already implied earlier, this is still very much an album cut from the same cloth as their debut. It's oddly nostalgic and comforting in a way. The vibe feels evocative of progressive metal of yesteryear, where everything was Djent adjacent, everyone wanted to be Meshuggah or Periphery or whoever. It was a time when Bandcamp was drowning in near-identical instrumental bands, where palm-muted staccato riffing was the norm, and everything and everyone was kind of bleeding into each other, making for a soup of homogeneous ideas. Now, sometimes these ideas hit, but more often than not, it was just a little exhausting to find the gold amidst the generic slop. Look, anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that Ihlo were one of the spearheading pioneers that rose above this mire. They still carried the blood of the Djent movement, sure, but they made it their own. They stood aside from the slew of bands who shouted loud and proud, but whose hollering could mostly be ignored. Legacy is a record that manages to grapple with the elements of Ihlo's past that worked well for them, but also pushes their sound forwards, accepting and embracing the ways the musical landscape has changed in the years since Union came out. And it makes for an album that feels like it has one foot in the past, one in the future, and a head full of hope, wonder, and aspirations to be the best at what they do. And it truly is growth that defines this record, in as simple a fashion as the amount of music, as we're dealing with an album in excess of 70 minutes here to the 53 minutes that Union had, to as complex a fashion as the band understanding what this new, evolving musical landscape needs and how to leave their indelible stamp on the world. Legacy is one of those rare and treasured examples of a record that feels a fraction of its length in the best possible way. By the time the final, longest track on the album peters out with its earned, heartfelt exit, I continued to crave more from it. I wanted to continue this musical journey it led me on, and it made it incredibly easy to just swing right back around and start the album all over again. And what an album we are talking about here, consisting of 10 songs with the majority of the compositions sitting in the kind of 7 to 8 minute range. Everything on Legacy is given appropriate time to breathe, to let their ideas flourish and grow, but not so long that anything feels long-winded or stagnant. The balance between heavy guitar riffing, ethereal keys, deep and complex instrumental passages, and spine-chilling vocals is impeccably well done. I cannot recall a single moment on Legacy where I felt bored or frustrated. I was always thrilled. I was always excited. It's a combination between the band living in the moment, exploring the thrill of an idea or a passage, but simultaneously they're setting up whatever's coming next. Every song manages to just build and build, delivering one esoteric passage after the other, always managing to expertly layer one extraordinary adventurous idea on top of the other, but never letting anything falter or fail. Take the final two-hit combo of the title track and Signals. This 20 minutes or so of music easily stands tall as the band's crowning achievement, even above the extraordinary closing track off Union, Coalescence. There's a moment around halfway into the title track where this repetitious keyboard riff breaks through the cloud cover of the dense instrumentation that feels like sunlight pouring forth into a valley that's been shrouded in darkness for centuries. It comes alive, it glows with a kind of spine-tingling sense of wonder and longing. And it was right here that I knew just how special Legacy was. It made me look backwards on the album that led up to this point. It made me appreciate the vocal flexing, the catchiness of the riffs, and the maturity of the structuring of all the songs, all from this one simple repeated riff. Now that's not to say that I needed this late-game moment to appreciate the album, more that it granted me some perspective. It was the spark that retroactively lit the fuse, but the artillery is there from the very moment the album begins. Legacy is incredibly well structured, bringing more traditional sounding songs out initially. The run from Wraith up to Empire feels the most accessible out of the cuts from the album, delving into more familiar sounds and structures that most of us will be prepared for. But it's from the midway break track of Storm that Legacy truly lives. Mute, Cenotaph, Ha, and the aforementioned title track and Signals could have been a perfect 40-minute long album by themselves, but to have the 30 or so minutes of those first few tracks alongside this, it's the sign of a record that deserves its runtime and justifies every single second you spend with it. Now, I've mentioned in some videos this year that I have been struggling to fathom the idea of any record beating out Deaf Heaven's Lonely People with Power, and while this might be the honeymoon period speaking, Legacy is one of the first albums to come out this year that has stood shoulder to shoulder with that magnificent release. It is difficult for me to pick at any kind of genuine fault on Legacy, as for all intents and purposes, what Ihlo have done here is ostensibly perfect. They've built on their debut in ways that take some bands decades to achieve. I just want to put this up there with sophomore releases like Dream Theater's Images and Words, Protest the Hero's Fortress, Haken's Visions, etc., as a near-perfect example of how to expand on what already worked so well in the first place, but to take it in the necessary directions to show that you're committed to becoming the best possible example of what you are, and that your music is evolving in a fluid, natural, and organic fashion. Legacy isn't just a good album, it's a perfect mission statement. It's a defiant series of compositions that will stand the test of time and be regarded in reverent tones in years to come. This feels like it is the album that others are going to be coming to, that new bands will be using as a reference point for their own legacies to be crafted. And I think that is ultimately what works so well and so effectively with this album. It feels inspirational, like Ihlo have not been sitting still for a second in the 6 years since Union came out. They've been going to the musical gym and never skipping leg day. Everything that made Ihlo such an exciting new prospect back in 2019 has been built upon, flexed and perfected in ways I was hoping for but never truly expecting. Legacy is an extraordinary output that feels unmissable and essential to anyone with even a passing interest in progressive metal.
The shadow fades.
So, what else can I possibly say about Ihlo's legacy? When I heard that these guys were finally pushing out their second album, I won't lie, I let out a little bit of a squeal of delight. More so than almost any band out there right now, Ihlo were the ones I felt carried the keys to grandeur more so than anyone else. To call Legacy a resounding success doesn't feel enough. This feels like it is everything that Ihlo have wanted to create, everything they have been capable of, and more besides. It's a journey from start to finish, constantly building, shifting, and evolving over its own sounds and ideas. It is a veritable smorgasbord of creativity, but without feeling like a disjointed mess that's pulling from too many sources. Legacy is a focused effort that understands what it is trying to say, but does so in a fashion that feels dynamic and interesting at all times. The moments it reaches outside of its order, colours outside of its lines, are brief but concentrated. It all feels so well put together and artistic, all I can do at times is just to step back and take it all in. Ihlo have crafted one of the most confident progressive metal albums of the 2020s with Legacy, and of course my recommendation here is to grab this one in physical format. This is a real Album of the Year contender, and I cannot fathom the idea of passing this one by. Don't skip this, don't ignore this. Set aside 70 odd minutes, put yourself on Do Not Disturb, and enjoy. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion. The album comes out on August 29th, so once you've had a chance to listen to it, please let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, please do tell your friends about Little Ol' Me, and please do consider subscribing to the channel if you've been enjoying my own particularly irreverent content so far. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.